Hello, everybody. I am here today to give a great record review on this 2012 Parasites Nonstop Power Pop Volume 1. Well, first of all, just to give you a little history, before the days of the internet, when I would buy uh, albums, of course, I would get my information from radio or MTV or other sources, word of mouth. And a lot of times it also came from, I got impressions from reviews and there was comparisons. And I started to learn things in the late 80s, early 90s about labels and producers. And I just got a feel. You just get a knack when you walked into a record store and you didn't have any information. You didn't have any preconceptions at all. And you would see a CD or a tape or something that would have just the right elements that you would know would be a good gamble to buy without ever hearing it in the past. And I built up a lot of my collection just from doing that. For example, I bought my first Boo Radley's Everything's Alright Forever, just based on the cover. I believe there was a sticker. I don't remember if it was Creation or Columbia, Chaos maybe. But there was a sticker on there that sort of described it and used the right words that I knew that it was a good buy for me. I know Catherine Wheel, the Ferment cover with like the orange circle or flower or whatever that is on the cover. That also was one I knew that I had to have. Some other ones was the Ocean Blue Cerulean. I got Greenberry Woods Rapple Dapple that way. In other words, I was putting together these images and making up my mind that this was going to be a good buy. And I can parallel that thinking to this Parasites 2012 album, Nonstop Power Pop Volume 1. Immediately what would catch my eye would be the word power pop. Most of the music that I like, or at least a lot of it, is power pop derived. Some of my favorite bands are power pop bands, definitely from the 90s, some from the 70s and 80s as well. So that, and then also I like the font, and I also like the titles of the songs. I love a lot of pop punk and power pop, and I can a lot of times tell by the song titles that I'm really going to enjoy the music. And so going back to the 90s buying habits I had pre-internet, taking gambles and risks, this would be definitely one that would have received heavy consideration just based on the look, the title, the song titles. Not so much the record label because I'm not that familiar with the record label. The record label is Kid Tested Records. Well, it's licensed from Kid Tested. It looks to me that's the actual record label, but it's distributed by Eccentric Pop Records. And I'm not that familiar with Eccentric Pop. I don't own anything, I don't think, besides this record. On the inside of this record, it came with a catalog. And it looks like a lot of this was bands from the 60s. Some of it are 45s. Looks like early 60s to me. And actually, what this record right here has this feeling of an early 60s, late 50s, what I call a high school dance band. Something that you see where the band would be on a stage in an auditorium with kids there to have a good time and enjoy. It reminds me of this record overall has a feeling of like a band like The Circle. If you've ever heard Red Rubber Ball or the Chorus, the band, it's definitely got elements of that. Now, it is called Nonstop Power Pop, and could you lump this in with power pop? You certainly can, but I think it's more of a pop punk record. If you're familiar with the undertones, it definitely has that feel. It's got a fast, energetic, all the way through. It sets the tone right away. The first song, What Kind of Love, you get that immediate, that romantic longing that you see in a lot of pop punk records. It sets the pace. It really doesn't deviate from that first song as far as the tempo, the subject matter, and I think it makes it a great record, but it also maybe doesn't take it over the top. Um, some other artists that I immediately came to mind is Screeching Weasel, the Queers, the Huntingtons, the Mopes. A lot of the Lookout record bands. I think that if you're going to align this with a classic record label, I would say that Lookout would be the label that it would appropriately fit in. I did a little bit of research. I didn't know anything about this band when I bought this record, honestly. Um, I'll just show you the record too. It's really cool. Um, it's a nice sky blue record. Uh, it plays really well. The quality's good. Um, Nothing as far as no negatives as far as that goes. Um, yeah, so immediately sets the tone. What kind of love's the first song, and you get the vibe of what kind of band it is. I don't really know what you call that. It's a lot of people that are probably into punk rock per se may not feel the vibe unless they're into. This is very coarse um, verse, chorus, bridge. It's very classic in the Screeching Weasel queer sense. Um, but you know, at the time when if it was came out in the '90s, I think that it could easily get buried. It reminds me of there were so many samplers that were coming out in the '90s. Fat Records, all those like fat music for fat people were great. And I discovered a lot of bands on there like Propaganda, High Strung. These bands I didn't know prior to buying that. I knew some of them like Lagwagon and Strung Out. And the Parasites remind me of an artist that you would find on a lot of those compilations. And there was you had your Epitaph and your Fat Records ones, but you also had some smaller labels. Like I think Go Kart Records put out some, and I did look and I did some research, and I didn't know much about this band, but they did release some material on Go Kart in the past. And I believe they might be somehow affiliated with the Lookout at some point too, maybe a subsidiary. But they have quite their most of their music is on Bandcamp. Um, you can find most of the records there. I know that when I bought this, and I don't remember when I got it, but it was pretty inexpensive. I mean, like under $15, I think, new. Um, One of the things that I really like about the album is it starts off strong, sets the tone, and the end of the album is great too. It doesn't dovetail off, it doesn't sink. Um, I think overall I would give the record a 7 out of 10. The reason it doesn't go higher for me is that I don't think that there's a lot that really sets this record apart from a plethora of other pop punk bands doing the same thing. I think it's extremely strong, but in order to get to the next step, an 8 or higher, I would need to have some sort of signature style that I would get out of this record. I don't see that. Probably my favorite songs is track number 4, I'm a Fool. I think it's a great love song. And also Never Die, which is track 11, and 12, You Can't Stop Me Loving You. Again, all the tracks are great. I think it's a great record, and it's really, really gives me a strong feeling when it has 14 tracks, and if 11 and 12 are great, at that point in the album, a lot of times you don't get the strongest tracks. But for me, those were two of the better tracks for 11 and 12. So it kept my attention all the way through. It's a very feel-good record. It has a very 50s vibe if you like the Beach Boys, the Beatles. Like I said, some of those early bands like Circle, The Chorus, you're really going to enjoy this record. Again, I would give it a 7 out of 10. And I hope that you find it in your collection one day. Again, Parasites Nonstop Power Pop Volume 1. Thanks for listening.